All right. Okay. All right. Let's do this. All right. Pleasure to be here today for our LinkedIn Sales Lunch and Learn. Today, we're going to cover how to develop a more effective outbound sales strategy through LinkedIn in particular. Our Lunch and Learns can be found on our on the Anvil Media website. We will be moving those over to the Dexia website, but you can always catch them also, these recordings, on the YouTube channel for Anvil Dexia. So look for those. You can follow me on the Twitter, like Kent J. Lewis. We are retiring the Anvil brand. So we're going to just ask people to follow us on the Dexia social profiles moving forward to stay up on the latest and greatest news and information. And with that, let's get started. So my background, for those that may not know me, is that I ran my own digital agency, Anvil Media, for 22 years. This March, sold to Dexia, based in the Midwest. It's exciting to be a part of a bigger entity and have a broader set of services beyond just our core digital marketing services. I've also been an adjunct professor at Portland State University for 22-ish years as well, where I've taught a search engine marketing workshop, a business-to-business marketing, et cetera. And I have a networking group I started in 1999 called PDX Mindshare. You can visit us at pdxmindshare.com, which is powered by Dexia, or visit the LinkedIn group and join that, which has 12,000 plus members looking to build and hone their networking community, their network, I should say. Learn more about digital marketing beyond Dexia's resources and the Anvil Media site, which will be around for another year or two. SEMPDX.org is a great local Pacific Northwest trade organization with a great blog and learning events, online and offline learning events at SEMPDX.org. And you can, if you're a senior digital marketer, you can schedule time for me to interview on Daily Ad Briefs show More to Know. You can Google that as well. And read some of my articles on Smart Brief. Also with Leadership Trust, I'm regularly published with the Biz Journals across the country, and I teach a social media workshop for SCORE since 2015 or so. So anyway, some of my credentials, but today we're going to talk less about marketing and more about sales specifically. So I mentioned Anvil's been around 22 years. Our peak was actually 11 years ago, revenue-wise, in 2012. 2011, 2012, and that revenue peak with only 14 employees was based on no outbound sales whatsoever. It was all inbound effort. So we were doing a lot of SEO. I was doing my thought leadership thing, which is what Dexia has tasked me with and which I enjoy doing, speaking, writing, etc. My background in PR means that I'm good at getting unpaid placement and visibility and third-party validation that way. But what I really didn't want to have to ever do was reach out with a cold sales call or a cold email and say, hey, how's it going? Have you heard about this? Or have you thought about that? It just gives me the heebie-jeebies. But unfortunately, I had to, at some point, make that leap, because in 2013, I completely blew up Anvil and rebuilt it from scratch. I wrote something called the Credo. You can Google Anvil Credo and read it. And your eyebrows should raise, because there's nothing in that should concern you as a potential employee. But in fact, half my team, when I gave them an ultimatum, sign the Credo or leave, half my team left. Basically, the underlying theme of accountability did not sound well. They're not going to want to hear it that way, but that's how I take it, is the only thing that changed was you are accountable for your actions. And having not held my team accountable prior, it created some issues, and I couldn't afford to replace the clients that they were losing at the rate they were losing them. So I had to rebuild a team with the help of my vice president at the time. We got to a much better place with a really gifted team that's here today. But even back in 2018, we were still rebuilding and replacing talent. When you have a glut and 100% employee turnover 2 years in a row, to run a business and try to make it profitable is challenging. We managed to pull it off, but at major emotional and physical and financial expense. So by 2018, we're in a spot where we had to either lay people off or go get some new business. And I had an advisory board for a decade, or almost a decade, about 7 years. And I wasn't getting diminishing returns from that, but I did bring on a business development expert named Lisa Forster And she did what I needed to do, which is kick my butt. So basically, Lisa was like, you need to get over yourself and go reach out to people and say, hey, I'd like to meet with you. I'd like your business. And I was scared to death to do that. She said, get over it. She gave me some tips, and I'm going to share some of that with you today. So my first round of outreach to 700 contacts in my network that were just senior marketers led to 5 new clients, including today, Anvil, Dexia's largest client, is a credit union, and that came out of a LinkedIn outreach. So to me, I had to get over this whole always be closing Glengarry Glen Ross or boiler room sort of thing and vibe with the fact that we needed to get business. I needed to make the ask. So I'm going to give you 5 strategies to do that. And the first one is to be human. And this is easy if you're a human, but it's hard if you're a human relying on apps and AI. So it's one thing to personalize with name, comma, and it's another to send a truly personalized note that acknowledges you know that person. That was my secret sauce, is I only reached out to first degree connections, and I knew like 90+% of them. And I've been nurturing those relationships through my LinkedIn feed and through outreach and so forth over the years and direct contact. But I made sure I personalized manually all 700 in messages. So they're not in mails, they were just messages because they were all first degree connections. And that little bit of personalization went a long way, as you might imagine. I also would say things that, if possible, would indicate that I was not a bot. And I talked to them as an individual. So you can see here, Peter Sage's email to me is, hey, first name. Nothing says I care about you more than first name, right? His tool did not work and did not customize, or it's certainly not going to get any business from me. And just today, I got a call from a very aggressive organization that's in our industry of digital marketing that sent me an email. I forwarded along to my team saying, hey, if we want them, I know who these guys are, here's their info. The guy calls me unannounced, and I'll just say to the salespeople out there, that's never a great idea, is to call people unannounced. And he called myself, no less. And the worst thing he did, and that led me to blocking his phone number, was he started to talk. He identified who he was, and I said, hey, and I was trying to explain that I'd already forwarded his email to the proper contacts, and he kept interrupting me. And I said, you need to shut the F up. And I hung up and I blocked his call. So he went from turning me into a prospect to an absolute hater. Now, I'm not going to soil that for the rest of Dexia, but because their product is very well known and respected, but the guy just made a simple mistake of not planning, unannounced call, and then wasn't simply listening and letting me talk. So to tell him that, I'm probably not a good prospect, but you've taken me as far as I'm going to go because I already passed your info along to the people that matter. I'm not that person. I'm not your contact. So he screwed that up royally. You can see here, Shalon is now running is senior VP at First Tech, our largest client. And this was the email, 15-minute conversation. And it just so happened she was having a bad day or a bad month or a bad quarter with the current agency of record at that time, which we have taken over all of that work from them 3+ years ago. And so this was a big move. And so I had never worked with her before, but we had known each other for over a decade. And so she knew I was a trusted person, and the timing was perfect. So timing is like 80% of it. The only way to mitigate the timing being lucky is to reach out regularly, right? We'll talk about that. So the second tip is to aim at the target. So I've done something that started out as a joke and it moved on from there. Is not a joke, but a race. A buddy of mine, Dylan Boyd, is a very senior guy at RGA Ventures. So he helps fund startups through big brands at the agency he's at here in Portland. And 12 years ago, he said, hey, you want to race see who can get to 1,000 contacts first? And so we drag raced for a lunch. I won that. Next thing you know, my next stop was we decided to get to 2,500. And I did that as well. So next thing you know, he's buying me 2 lunches. And I never stopped. So for 10 years, what I've been doing is basically making sure that I'm connecting every day with the suggested connections. So when you go to your connections tab, there are all these suggested connections. And if you game it right, they're going to give you the best connections, right? That are, for me, it's mid-level marketers, senior marketers, right? So I now have over 22,000 connections that I've nurtured over 10 to 12 years. And so that's what gave me the foundation of having more than 500 contacts that were relevant just to marketing. Out of the 22,000, there are 900 of them, or 1,000 that are actually senior level marketers. But it all started with getting over 500, because once you're over 500 connections, nobody can see more than that. Not without a special AI or a special premium membership, if at all. So once you get to 501, you're good from a credibility standpoint. But if you're a salesperson, you need to get to the biggest contacts. It's exponential at some point when you have, I'm 1 degree to Kevin Bacon at this point, and salespeople need to keep that in mind too. It's exponential how many more people you can bring on as a snowball effect or a butterfly effect. Is now that I have this connection, then these other 20 people in their connection, in their network, will see me as more valid. They're more likely to accept my connection request, and so on and so forth. So that's what to keep in mind. And then the outreach, I started with the people I knew best, and I worked my way out like a target into concentric external rings of, start with my current intimate network would be my current and past clients, existing partners and vendors. And then I work my way out into prospects. So I go from 2nd and 3rd degree connections to try to get them to be 1st degree and keep going. And then the big recommendation I have for you that I have struggled with is asking for warm introductions. So I've taken Lisa's advice in every way, except I've not done a great job with warm introductions. That just simply, with your most intimate network that knows you best, simply saying, do you mind introducing me to so-and-so at Nike or such and such at Lego? I see you're connected with them. And what Lisa said is 90% of the time, they say yes without hesitation, because they trust you and that you're going to look good. You're going to make them look good, right? For making the introduction. That requires you to make them look good, of course, but that's easier to do when you make that ask in the first place. So that's how Lisa has gotten into a bunch of global brands, is taking care of her network and then selectively making those asks for warm introductions. And it's been very successful for her. It'll probably work for you. And then, of course, know your target audience. It took me a lot of trial and error to realize CMOs, even though that's my title today at Dexia, we're a smaller organization, I am not on par with a Coca-Cola CMO. There's no question that they have a bigger, better education, or at least in theory, more expensive at least. And they have a bunch of experience with rev ops and performance marketing that I don't, or other disciplines and fancy tools and other MBAs and so forth. So I learned that CMOs don't have time for me. They don't know who I am, back when I was just mere president of Anvil. I also found that marketing managers or lower were not enough of an influencer, and certainly not the decision maker. So they were generally too junior. So the sweet spot for me was VPs of marketing at brands that I was targeting. Sometimes an SVP, sometimes a director, and occasionally an owner even. There was no CMO, let's say in a smaller business, that might be the case. But you got to know your audience for your target. And it took me a couple of rounds to figure out and laser in on that VP of marketing and effect and equivalent. Might be a CMO, might be a director, you get the idea. And then I worked my way outwards to new contacts from knowing nobody in an organization, going in through side doors, connecting with the graphic designer, connecting with the copywriter. And then once I make the ask by the time I make the ask to the head of marketing, I'm already connected with other people in the organization. That's the kind of thing I would do if I was a full-time salesperson, which I never really was. I never could dedicate that much time to it. But that strategic account-based marketing, account-based sales approach, I think is a really effective strategy. The third tip is to keep it simple and brief. So less is more. This was one of my most difficult things. Once I agreed, okay, I'll make the outreach. And incidentally, out of all the outreaches, let's say 700 the first time, 800 the second time, and 900 the third time, because each time my list kept growing, my connections, is that nobody told me to F off, because it's easy just to simply ignore it or say no thank you. So the difference here is keep it short and sweet. I like to talk, you can tell. But to get down to this 1, 2, 3, 4, there are four sentences. Lisa was saying you got to try and get it down to 2, no more than 3. And I went with 4 because that's the least I could do. That's as short as I could get it. So this is one of my follow-ups with first tech. So it wasn't the first hit, it was the second hit that got that sank the hook. Again, 2 sentences ideally, and then that call to action. So most of the time we say hi and we don't have a specific ask. Salespeople are typically good at this, more so than more of a marketing type like myself, is ask for that meeting. I found that 15-minute meeting did not sound viable. It didn't sound realistic. And I ended up 30 sounded too long. So I ended up with 20 after this one says 10 minutes on the side here, way too short. So my future pitches ended up being 20 minutes, which sounds like it's realistic, it's authentic, and it's efficient, at that length. Hard to say no to. No attachments, especially that first conversation. Get permission to send anything. Get a permission to can I call you? Don't do what this guy did with this tech company, which was not appreciated by me. I didn't expect the call, didn't want the call, wasn't the right contact anyway, but he was just being aggressive and trying to do his thing, and still screwed up. 4th tip, maintain consistency. This one's hard unless this is your full-time job, is to figure out the volume, the quantity and quality of your outreach. So I initially just did 1 outreach a year. Then I went to 2 outreach, 2 touch points. And I think the 3rd time I went to 3 before I ended up selling to Dexia. I hadn't done a round in 6 or 9 months. But the idea is I wouldn't go more than 4 times a year hitting these people with people in your network that you haven't had a direct dialogue with yet. Because most of those people that I hit 3 to 4 times was over a 2-year period, honestly. And most of them, 95%, never responded, right? But of the, honestly, 98.5%, there was 0.5% that said, no, thanks, not interested ever, barely. But there was 1% that said, I'm interested now or later. And that's all I needed. I needed those, 20 leads or whatever it was that turned into 5 clients. So that scheduling that outreach is good. Using the premium account is good. Using a sales navigator account, which is I think $100 a month, is even better because it helps you identify and suggest targets for you. Does a lot of heavy lifting. There are other tools you can use that automate some of the process. We can talk about them later. I won't give specifics on this call, but maybe just say, I hear that Octopus is good. But be wary of those third-party plugins because they can glitch, like you said. Hi, first name, that's a deal breaker. And that guy probably sent it out to 100 or 10,000 contacts, and none of them are ever going to reach out to him unless they're insane or they're blind. So be careful with your automated platforms. And again, it took me a couple of years. I'd say a total was 3 years start to finish of, 3 to 4 touches. But just that first touch was enough to get 5 clients out of maybe 20 leads, which is a pretty good conversion rate. So you can see, like with Lynn here on the side, originally reached out December 8th, and she responded right away. Have a conflict, follow back up. Lo and behold, she said through October, so I followed back up in April. And and this is a whole separate methodology and articles and presentations, is I always like to follow up with value. It's one thing to make an ask. It's another to provide something in return. Reciprocity is obviously a powerful sales tool. So I often would share an article I thought would make their lives better. Meanwhile, it also validates me as a thought leader because I wrote the article on NFTs for Think Northwest's blog, and it gave a lot of credibility, right, to the cause. So I think that's the takeaway here. 5th tip, be fearless, right? This was my initial concern is, are people going to be really upset when I reach out? The answer overwhelmingly is no, especially if you do it in a non-offensive way. So, don't be afraid to reach out and make that ask. More importantly, nobody told me, as I mentioned, to buzz off. You just simply ignore somebody. There was one case where a guy said, I don't need your help because I'm already crushing it. And I said, really? And I'm the kind of guy, because I'm the boss of my own self, I challenged him on that. And I gave him an example of 10 things he wasn't doing. And he's still in denial. I said, well, do you want me to reach out to your boss about this stuff that you need to do but aren't doing? I mean, are you lazy or are you lying to me? So you're lying to yourself or you're lying to me. But you know, I didn't get that business for sure. But I just don't like when people lie to me because I knew that he didn't know that stuff or he would have done it. And if he wasn't doing it, he wasn't doing his job. If he knew about it and didn't do it. So either way, I had him. Sometimes it's not worth it to be right. Next is to say, you know, look for those, yes, I'm interested, but, you know, not yet, let's talk again. Let's talk again is not a no, it's a strong maybe, and it may turn into yes. And I found that I'd say a third of the leads that said I'm not ready yet did turn into leads within roughly the time frame, typically just a bit longer than they anticipate, but it can be very effective. You can see here, Monica says, sorry for the background noise from the team here. Sorry for the long delay, would love to be in touch. I said, great. And then I followed up again, again later. So sometimes those things need to happen, but track and, use a system, whether it's Navigator or your own internal system or HubSpot or Excel, to track up and know who to follow up with when, put the tickers on your calendar, whatever the case. I think that's a really good way to go about that discipline. The sixth tip would be to start small. So set a daily goal, 5 to 10 outreaches at a time. Maybe that's daily. And then, just to send notes to your prospects through LinkedIn or even directly through email if you have their contact info. And once you form that habit of just doing 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 a day, you might move to a batch approach where you might spend an hour, a half hour here, an hour there, where you're doing more of them at once to get greater efficiency and focus. I've preferred the weekly touch for an hour rather than 5 times, during the week for 10 minutes. But it's whatever works best for you is what the right answer is. Okay, so with that said, this is a view of the Navigator. If you haven't used Sales Navigator, I have it. I don't use it. I use it just for my show daily on the daily ad brief. More to know. It's to help them book guests. And so here I am underutilizing that platform, but it would be inappropriate for me to be reaching out as a CMO to another CMO to solicit business, and would erode what I'm trying to build is a peer relationship with other CMOs to build that trust and respect. And then maybe someday they'll reach out and say, hey, maybe you can help us because I happen to be a CMO at an agency versus a CMO at a non-marketing firm. Seventh tip, use an accountability partner. So this is Lisa Forster, and she has been a friend of mine for 20 years. She brought me into Intel while she was at a different agency early on. We were doing search for Intel, a couple different divisions, huge opportunity. She's always been with the big fish because she is fearless and she follows all these best practices. In fact, this whole presentation is based on my lessons learned from her. She's a sales coach, primarily for agency owners and others that don't inherently have the sales bug, but she's pretty good at coaching them up. But I think there's a lot to learn from her. She has her own online curriculum that she's building for salespeople or those looking to get into that sales role or improve it. I'd say that our Dexia sales team may not benefit from it as much as our account people or other people. But mainly the point here is once a month, we check in with each other and hold each other accountable for the goals we set relative to our roles. So she's, at a big global firm that's based in Canada as a remote salesperson for them, bringing in, and she brought in $10 million of pipeline to them in the last year, and they have not been able to take on most of it for very internal reasons, perhaps. But my bottom line is she's good at what she does. So it's good to listen to her, but we hold each other accountable. It's a lot easier than trying to hold ourselves accountable, right? And it doesn't even matter whether your accountability partner, like at Dexia, we have buddies that we meet with once a month. They could be that person where you're like, I committed to making 100 outbound inquiries or sales calls in the next 30 days. And then 30 days from now, did you make those 100 calls? How many bites did you get? How many proposals? How many closed deals? So that's the kind of thing that anybody can hold you to without knowledge of your sales strategy or of sales in general. So those monthly check-ins I find invaluable. So I have a buddy internally at Dexia, and I have Lisa as my sales buddy that I'm holding her accountable to build out her business, Cheerful Persistency, which may be renamed based on my advice. But also she helps me accountable for goals that I may not set internally or share internally with my Dexia peers, but it's important for me to achieve those with Dexia. And she knows me well enough that I can have those conversations confidentially. And so, you look at your funnel. And so, the challenge that I had with my VP at Anvil before we were acquired by Dexia and I handed over sales role was we were not reaching out enough, not enough touches, not a big enough frequency, not a big enough total reach. And then our follow-ups were infrequent because we had other responsibilities. So getting to that big number and then getting to follow-ups, to discussions, to presentation, to proposal, to close deal, you should be tracking each of those steps. I know at Dexia we use HubSpot, and I assume we can use it for that to track those deals. You can use Navigator and other tools. But the bottom line is you should know what your percentage rates are for each, and then it's a numbers game. Well, I know if it's a 10% to conversion to follow-up and a 20% to discussion, 30% to presentation, 50% to proposal, and 70% to close deals, or whatever your numbers are, they vary, then I know I need to hit the sales goal. I need this many new outreach touches and this many follow-ups each month, each week, each day. My 8th tip, obviously leverage your network. I started my career in public relations based on an introduction my mom made to one of her board members at a big agency in Seattle, and that kicked off my first internship, which kickstarted my career. So start with your first degree contacts and leverage those, right? Reconnect with all your first degree contacts. Then send regularly connection requests to second and third degree contacts in LinkedIn. Like I said, go to the contact section and look at the suggested contacts from your school, from your area, in our case, Portland, and from your industry, in this case, for me, marketing. And I always send, I was used to my peak, I was sending maybe 10 requests a day. And that's way trailed off now in my new role, but I still do it once or twice a week. And those warm introductions from your first degree connections to those other ideal prospects, again, account-based sales model, you know who your named accounts are, go after them, leveraging that existing LinkedIn or physical network. And then reaching back out to your first degree to feed and nurture them. So here's some updates. Here's a new article. Here's something I thought you would find interesting, whether it's about you or your employer or your industry, or more importantly, their industry. So I usually set up a Google Alerts for my biggest prospects. And when the news hits, I share it with them, and they often haven't seen it yet. And they thank me. I built trust without even really having to know their industry. It's just that they hear it from me first. So that's a great way to do that, is through InMail or just direct contact. 9th tip, quantity versus quality. This hints at the previous slide and the fact that I was working at 900 contacts for my initial lead base. And 1 to 1.5 turned into prospects percent-wise. And do the numbers there. And of those, 30% turned into proposals and maybe 40% closed. Roughly, you can do the numbers from 700 to 5 clients. You can kind of guesstimate that. But it is a numbers game at the end of the day. You've got to start with the top of the funnel numbers to get down to your desired new business. So again, at a 1 to 2% conversion rate, you need 100 contacts to get 1 or 2 deals. So how many contacts you're going to need just to get those deals, and keep growing that Rolodex, refine your pitches to improve your percentage conversion rates, and get to your larger sales goals with the same number of leads. And then finally, 10th tip, remember the fundamentals. So marketing supports sales, sales supports revenue. So make sure you're investing in marketing and that sales and marketing are talking together, right? That's really important, that in our case, that our sales effort, our marketing efforts are supporting the sales team at Dexia. That should be the case at your organization. For instance, we had an Anvil newsletter for 20 years, took a couple months off as we retooled and we're rebuilding as a Dexia newsletter to clients and prospects and past clients and partners. I found that over the years, the single best lead flow generator for Anvil pre-Dexia was our newsletter, because I put everybody that I ever met each month into the newsletter. And eventually there might be people I haven't talked to in 10 years say, it's time to talk. And in the old days, 10 to 15 years ago, every time I sent a newsletter at the start of each month, I got 2 to 3 calls or emails saying it's time to go, because they had been on the list for one email or for years. It was the consistent touch point, low energy, high return. So don't forget those digital channels, right? So there's search, like SEO, search engine optimization, organic social, paid social ads, paid search ads. Webinars are a great source for us like these to generate leads in theory. And they can drive those MQLs, those marketing qualified leads, very effectively, particularly B2B. Webinars are invaluable. For software, it might be a demo or a trial. And for consumer brands, it's just getting in front of folks, but it's more, there's lower bars to getting in front of consumer versus B2B. So the traditional channels work for all types of audiences, public relations, my background, advertising, events, etc., can all generate that awareness and credibility so that when you do reach out and they've heard of you, it's kind of like the voting at the ballot, the midterm election, is that name recognition trumps almost everything else. So if you can get your name out there, you can win. That's a lot of reason why Trump became president. It wasn't because of his political savvy or experience. Email drip campaigns, that's really the meat and potatoes of your sales efforts, is building customized funnels and campaigns that segment audiences and give them what they need over a period of time to get them to reach out and say, I'm ready, let's do this. So in summary, be human, aim at the target, keep it simple, maintain consistency, that discipline over time, be absolutely fearless or even a little fearless. You can start small, but you can build from there. You can utilize an accountability partner, which I highly recommend. Leverage your network. It's there for a reason. Take care of it. And then it is at some point a quantity game. If you want to say it's about quality, it still is about quantity in order to hit aggressive numbers at the very least. And don't forget those fundamentals of the marketing that helps support the sales efforts. Your conversion rates go way up if they've heard of you. So here are 4 articles that are related. And when you get a copy of this deck, you can request a copy through our website or through me directly. And if you're watching a video, you can just Google these out on the internets and find them. For those of you that bothered to listen to this, I want to thank you. And you can reach me at kent@dexia.com. It's not written here because people listening on mute are more than likely just seeing the deck. Oh, never mind. It's right there. The next steps. Damn. Oh, well. Check out our newsletter and then reach out if you need any help with your sales or marketing support to make sure that you have what you need to be successful. I want to thank everybody for your time and acknowledge that this will be up on our YouTube channel. We will also have a gated version of this deck for access, and hope you enjoy your time and hopefully will come visit us again sometime and join us for a future. I believe our next one is going to be on 2023 marketing predictions. More on that at anvilmediainc.com. Thank you for your time, everybody, and we'll see you again next time. All right.